My name is Diego Garcia. I'm a painter, and I love and appreciate art very much. Oh man, I know I'm pretty sensitive or hyper aware of like trauma being a sensitive. I have family, I have like experience with trauma, and I get that it's a sensitive topic. So it's not like out of like a taboo that I wouldn't ask, but it's out of like empathy. It's out of like, I know it's not something that you owe me to talk to right away. So maybe I would be hesitant. No, not maybe, indefinitely. I probably, I would think of that when asking somebody something. So I just try to gauge that. I try to gauge like if that sentiment is coming up, if like that emotion of like, it's too much, I'm not a pushy type of dude. I'm a pretty low maintenance partner, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather create an organic experience, an organic bond where like that stuff has room to grow and manifest and be talked about on its own. You know what I mean? I'm not sitting here trying to stick poke nobody, you know what I mean? If the bond and the chemistry is there, if the bond and the chemistry is there, I think nothing's too taboo, and it's just about being honest. That's the hard part, because we all have like affections and things that we want, and we all have like a certain type of like expectation, that might make us want that, instead of being honest and saying, is it really there? Is like that chemistry really there? And ever since I've been, for the past couple of years, working on presentness and working on understanding that about myself, it's easier to find that space with other people. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to find that safe space where chemistry is like an ebb and flow. It's easy to, because I've learned it for myself, So when you have that within yourself, it attracts others to be able to do the same, I feel, So I think sooner than later, but, responsive to the chemistry of it all,
Yeah, kind of following the lead too, but
Yeah,
just
like,
getting it out
right.
as early
Ain't
as
it,
you can.
yeah, being ready for it sooner than later, especially, and then as soon as possible, especially when your expectations are met with the right chemistry, right, and the right bond. Sooner than later, of course. Let alone like when something's really hitting, it's feeling right. Like let's get to it. Let's understand each other, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Something I've learned about myself, I've been in the most fruitful relationship ever in my entire life for like the past 2 years. And that comes from one, Sarah just being an angel on earth, like her just being a fantastic person. But also two, like it's the first time I've kind of done a lot of homework on myself the past couple years. And like, I'd like to think I'm a pretty open book. I mean, I paint, you know what I'm saying? Like, I must be to some extent, and I am. But I've learned with being with a really smart, healthy, intellectual person that although I might have I might have turned over a stone and thought I had it like understood, going back to it with a little bit more transparency, with a little bit more maturity. Yeah, that stone's still a little dirty. Put some elbow grease in that, papa. You know what I mean? Like really, like look at it. So that's something that I've learned in being in a relationship, that now my answer would probably be like I wouldn't know how solitary of a person I actually am until I've been introduced to somebody like my partner that understands me like really at my core. And I'm a pretty solitary dude. I've never really had the opportunity to like learn. If you're solitary, you don't really know because you don't have no comparison. That's what I'd be telling Shorty all the time. Like I was learning that, I got away with my entire adult life just working on painting and really just disciplining myself to learn how to be the most effective painter possible. But that takes a lot of time alone. That takes a lot of time in my head. That takes a lot of time in front of canvas alone. You know what I mean? So I'm a much more solitary person than I ever give off. And I'm a social butterfly. I love people. That's the thing that I had to learn. They both can be true. Those are two things that can be true at the same time. It doesn't feel like they could. Like, how could this person be that, right? We all hear that stuff, right? But it's the truth, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that I would have never known to talk about until I was exposed to a healthy, intellectual person that I'm, in a relationship with, to say like, oh wow, like now that I'm like in this abundant sharing and co-space, I've been solo for decades, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that until recently.
Yeah.
So that's something I talk about now more than I ever would. I'm a pretty solitary person. Oh man, on the same topic of being a lot more solitary than I ever would have really understood until recently. I don't want to know. It sounds ignorant to say that I wouldn't want to know something, but it's true. I probably went a long time. Like I'm afraid of what a clinician would say to me when I was first trying to like learn how to paint when I dropped out of college, like learn how to, like market my work and get it out there and stuff like that. I don't want to know how depressed I was, you know what I mean? I'm there. I think back on that like, oh, there's been some dark times for this shit, you know what I mean? Like this shit could have gone left a couple times, you know? So, there's something there's something in feeling that now as like as a mature adult, like, oh my God, this is like totally a response to X, Y, and Z that happened, or this is totally a feeling that's groomed or catalyzed by previous relationships or lack of exposure to, or whatever have you. There's stuff that I understand now that definitely like my inability to express my need for solitude is something that's affected a lot of things in my life. Personal, platonic, romantic, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Those are a lot of elements that I wouldn't have known how to talk about, and I didn't, so they indefinitely affected God only knows how many, situations or things or experiences or relationships or whatever have you, I don't really, it's like the same, it's the same way I feel when somebody asks like, oh, how long does it take to make a painting? I'm a participant in a bigger thing, and I think that's part of why I've like been able to let go of like needing an answer to that. Ultimately, like segueing to that, I don't really have an answer, but it's because, when I'm feeling, whether it's an extremely personal thing that I'm trying to work out, regardless of art, let alone if it includes working it out through art, right? There's a lot of time to process, and I think we don't really owe anybody any time. Like, we should be respectful and mindful. Like, we shouldn't be like tone deaf and just kind of do our own thing when there's people that care about us and when we have responsibilities. But, I don't really necessarily like to sit on like, because there's been times where it's been months. There's been times where it's been months where I've sat in a very dark place of like the Neverland map, and that's not sometimes out of maybe indefinitely in hindsight out of depression, and in hindsight indefinitely out of just needing that time to grow and feel it and understand it, you know what I mean? And ultimately that time, I don't think I can necessarily like take full credit. I can try, we all have a responsibility to ourselves to like not sit around and like, just, like sulk in it. But, when I'm painting, I feel like I'm only a conduit. I'm only a receiver of a message that's coming from a portal that's way beyond me. So who am I to take credit or to say that it can be done in X, Y, and Z, Even in my contracts now, like, I can get it. Like, the goal is to get it done with here, but I'm going to tell you it's calling me something else and I'm going to need some more time. Or vice versa. It hit me all at once and I processed it and it's done. I've met deadlines. I've exceeded deadlines. You know what I mean? And I've lapped. It's never one answer. You know what I mean? There's stuff that's really personal that feels like it calls to be worked on in some sort of artistic process, and that's not that. I think when you're trying to learn a craft, when you're trying to learn how to, I was learning how to paint and how to be a professional painter and how to apply myself in that way and discipline my life in that way. Now that I have that discipline, I can be mature enough and honest with myself of like, it's not this like over thing. I just need to go work out. You know what I mean? Like I just need to go exercise. There's some things that like it's easier to navigate understanding my processes of coping. There's some stuff where it is something that like I'm called to work it out on canvas or something. And there's some stuff that like I just need to sit on. Maybe it's internal. Maybe it's just something that a shortcoming of someone else or myself that like it's neither here nor there. No, I'm not judging any. It's not my job to judge anybody. it's you know, it's just I need a clear head, and sometimes, you know, working out is, I wouldn't have answered that question with working out a couple years ago, you know what I'm saying? But now for sure, like exercise, sensory deprivation, like those like saltwater sensory deprivation tanks, meditation, like music, you know. I like listening to a lot of like ethereal music, whether it be a movie score or a composition that I like that I can just like have on loop, you know. And if it has an emotion or a sonic tone that's like helping me with how I'm feeling, I'll just kind of ride that wave for a while, you know. And there's sometimes, again, there's been chunks of my life, and there's been, you know, blips of my life, you know. So it's neither here nor there regarding time, as long as, you know, as long as that's healthy, as long as that can be healthy, you know. There's sometimes where it's unhealthy to not care about time, you know. There's times where it's not healthy to like not look at the clock, like right, like what we said, you know, like what I said before, like, you know, we don't want to sulk in it and like being there too long, but, you know, nature finds a way,
And making
you know.
sure that you give yourself enough time, not too much.
Right. There's a balance. And I think when you're starting, I feel like when I'm starting to kind of feel that, it's like, that's probably life telling you to like, yeah, you're good. You know, if you're feeling antsy and like you're overthinking the time, you're probably ready to keep it moving, you know? So. Something that I heard earlier, just the permission to, you know, go be in my solitude and peace, and to know that like it isn't coming with some sort of, it isn't coming at a cost to anybody, you know, because like that's often a feeling that like, you know, I've been at it for a while, and I've had enough time to like read between the lines of like with the contract that I signed with the universe, of like what the discipline and like the sacrifice it takes, and like that's not to like, you know, oh woe is me is all, but you know, it takes a mental shift and a discipline for sure that is at the expense of other things and other experiences that maybe somebody else might not give up so easily. So I've felt that, and so with my relationship now, it's a blessing to know that it feels that way, that it doesn't come with that. And that's really what I need, just that permission and grace. Just give me grace while I work this out. I don't really need a pat on the back. I'm a low maintenance partner. It's not really about me. It's about figuring it out and getting it out. And it's not like I want to run back to Shorty and say, look what I did. It's more so like, thank you for giving me the space to kind of do this and keeping it moving. And if they're understanding of it, all the better. And, you know, God bless that she is, you know. And I'm not like the type to like rant or like, I rant. No, that's a lie. I definitely rant. But like, I don't need like a vent to like, oh, you're doing great, honey. Don't stress that. Or I don't really need that. I just, an unbiased ear to talk it out is cool to me. You know, I don't really need much. Again, it's not like this me validating thing. It's, you know, even Flip and I, when we talk about the work, you know, like I'm not talking about look what I did. We're talking about this separate entity, this thing that's been created, and we're talking about it separately. You know, my experiences translate to it, and like I have an invisible string to it. I'm not like, that's not lost on me. But that's not the part that I ever need from anybody. That's like the part that I've seen that might be a little different from people I've experienced in the past. That like, it isn't this like, look at me thing. It's just give me space to, it's like a child, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this separate thing that I have to make sure is breathing and healthy, you know? And as long as you show empathy and advocacy for that, and empathy and advocacy and not admiration towards me, but admiration towards it, towards art, you know? That's all, other than that, we cool, you know? Like, I could say something and I could like have a vent about something, and I'm not really looking for a creative feedback or anything. It's not something that like I'm trying to like prove to myself or like hear you tell me that I'm right about. It's not like that. It's just, I just want to talk about it, you know? I just want to talk about it. And just like the unbiased grace to talk about that is chilling, cool, you know what I mean? The irony is that like it's probably the most common trope of like what questions you ask on a first date anyway. Like I'm not really a fan, for my own personal reasons, and that's like a conversation separate from all this. It's with, you know, that's a whole nother conversation in itself, but like so like, what do you want? And like, do you want kids and like a house? And it's not necessarily my like fear of answering those questions, is that I quite literally like jumped off the societal train. You know what I mean? Like, you know, this was a kid that dropped out of school and like didn't go to art school because there was no jobs in it, and society does not really society really didn't prepare a narrative like mine. And like it's not me, it's not just me. Like there's millions of painters across the planet that feel the exact same way. Let alone in this country that we're like, you know, groomed and shepherded through education, right? And our choices through education and like what we want to do for our lives. So like I've noticed that having that path, for the fact that path happened for me and that I was called to do that made me very like, if you're asking me questions about like some cookie cutter expected timeline, I don't like those things. I don't want to talk about those things, you know? And I've been asked, and it's not like, it's not like terrible. I'm not like mad at anybody who's ever asked me that, because it's natural, it's fine. I just don't personally like that. Like, you know, I was like, yeah, it's like that stuff, that's not, you know what I mean? But quite ironic that, like, you know, most people, those are the questions they need answers to first before they can even go deep, you know, because they need to know if there's a sense of promise and there's a sense of like-minded intentions, which again, isn't wrong. That's like, I get it. Like, you know, you have every right to ask those questions. Like, a woman has a biological clock. She has every right to honor that if she chooses to. So, you know what I mean? Like, do you want kids or whatever? Yeah, you have every right to answer that. Ask that question because it's your body, and if you want somebody to have kids with you, might as well fucking ask that question sooner than later, you know? It's just that for me, it's like, that's not, my life has quite been not the opposite, but not that. You know, those questions are not the answers. Those aren't questions I want answers to, and I'm cool with that, you know? Like JB said something to me that was like super prolific. Like, you know, when Sarah and I first started dating, you know, you know, and you guys have met her too. She's an angel. We're talking about it, and he's like, yo, like, it was the same topic of like, we're talking about like status in our relationship and progress, and I kind of like, it wasn't bad, but I kind of like found myself scratching my head, like, I don't know, like, you know, I don't know, you know, we just started dating and da-da-da-da-da and beady-beady-boop. And he's like, you know, dog, like, this is cool. Like, lean into, and it was cool. We were driving to a show, and he's like, I think what's getting you, like, kind of, I think when you're stubbing your toe on, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, and I'll get to what he actually said. Because, you know, I'm stumping my toe, what I think, and he was right. I think I was stumping my toe on the labels and the timeline and all these expected answers. He's like, dude, like, lean into the fact that this came up to you in a non-conventional way, and that's beautiful, and like that means it's organic. And truth be told, dog, your life has been non-conventional the day you decided to be a painter. I decided to be a painter many a year ago before any form of monogamy. So hearing that felt so like, oh yeah, duh. You know, so naturally I wouldn't really be inclined to or naturally called to conventional conversations and timelines. So that was really what it was. That was like the clicking thing that like this has been non-conventional since the day I decided that I wanted to paint for a living or to be an artist of any degree, you know, so. Oh man. Honestly, like, I don't think there's like, I mean, there's like a million versions, right? Like that, you know, there's a lot of fun things out there to do. I think more importantly for me to feel like okay, I'm like comfy and I'm like open, is like the time. You know, I don't like the idea of like a specific time that maybe that, when saying that does kind of exclude, all right, maybe something with a concert time on it, or like maybe those things might not be what I like. It could be fun, but I don't really, I feel the best when like we have yo, what are you doing tonight? We have all the time in the world to take it wherever we want to go. If the body language is right, we could keep it going. If, you know, if it's staying where it is, we can call it, and it's time, you know. My ideal version of a good date is, or a good first date is when we're both like off the clock. And you know, that makes way for the serendipitous and the right type of, you know, like having the time and being off the clock will help two people say, you know what, yeah, let's go to a show in the city and let's do something serendipitous. Or it'll help us both respond to our mood and say, you know what, like, nah, let's just like, you know, go smoke a joint and get to know each other or something, you know, like just having that awareness of like that we're off the clock and we're just really down to just do whatever. That palette, I'm cool, you know what I mean? I'm a pretty low maintenance partner, you know what I mean? Like I'm happy being around good company, and I'm happy being around somebody I like to make smile, and you know what I mean? And if we're off the clock, that feeling of like having that time is like what sets the palette for like a good date, you know? But anyway, my favorite color is purple. Thank you.